And thanks for having me. So today we're going to do a little bit of stuff talking about grip. Now we have maybe a 50. You're a grappler?
Sort of, yeah.
Okay. Who doesn't grapple? Okay, so you've got a couple of pure grip guys and a couple of grapplers. I'll aim this more towards, I guess, the grapplers, but it's going to be relevant for the grip guys as well. So the stuff that I'm going to talk about today is mainly going to be about the wrist. The wrist is, I think, a very undertrained aspect of the grip. A lot of people, a big part of my sort of philosophy when it comes to grip training is that what people don't realize about grip is that it encompasses many different forms, many different styles. So a lot of people just think anything, grip is grabbing onto someone and it's simple as that. But that's like saying body training, when you're referring to working out. You can't just go, oh, what are you doing in the gym today? Body training. Like, okay, well, specifically. So in the same way that we can train push, pull, squat, hinge, all of these different movements, you could train different movements in the hand and also in the wrist. And that's, I think, where a lot of people don't focus too much. They may focus on the hand stuff, so you have different types of grip, such as pinch and vertical gripping and closed hand support, open hand support, crushing, all of these different styles of grip, but a lot of people don't focus on the wrist. Now, if we had 7 hours, we could go through everything, but what I wanted to focus on more today is that wrist stuff, because I believe, especially more recently, and as it pertains to grappling, the wrist is the bridge between the hand and the rest of the body. If the hand is super strong, but the wrist is very weak, then you're not going to be able to transfer strength to and from that. And that is especially true when you're connecting yourself to something that isn't static. So if you're grabbing onto a deadlift bar, your wrist strength is not really relevant. But when you're grabbing onto a person's arm, and they're trying to move that arm away, and your arm and your hand and arm is being taken into different positions in doing so, that is where the wrist strength is really going to start. Everything that you do with your hands, you will have an ideal, optimal position for your wrist to be in. And if your wrist moves out of that optimal position, so by definition, it's going to be weaker. So the idea of what really we're going to probably focus on today is understanding the different movements of the wrist and working on building the strength to resist against movements from out of optimal positions. Okay? So like I was saying, you might have seen me demonstrate this before. If you grab onto my wrist here, when someone's grabbing onto the wrist, they're grabbing onto my wrist here with their hand. They have put their arm and hand into the optimal position to do so. It's very, very hard for me to break out of this. Stay strong. If I try and pull the hand off, this isn't really doing anything. However, if I can force the person's hand into a flexed position, look how easy it is for me to remove that. So when you're grip fighting, if you grab me here, I'm going to go like that, and you're going to remove it real easily. Now what it looks like when I do that is that I pulled the hand off, but I haven't. I forced the hand into flexion, so if you just flex your wrist to like 90 degrees, so you just do that with your wrist, you'll see how easy that is for me to remove, compared to if they do it here, it's much, much harder. So that's like the most visual example, but this is going to be true not just of forcing the wrist into flexion, but in some positions, forcing the wrist into extension and forcing the wrist into and out of deviation. So those are the four main, the main four movements of the wrist are flexion, extension, ulnar deviation, and radial deviation. When I talk about wrist very often, I will also reference supination and pronation as movements of the wrist. Technically, these are movements of sort of the elbow a little bit more. If you're looking at wrist training as a whole, I include this. But when it comes to resisting against movements, it's less relevant. Okay? It's still a little bit relevant. Like if you're supinated, you'll engage more of the bicep. If you're pronated, you'll lose more. So if you're grabbing onto someone and you pull with a palm up position, this is going to be a lot stronger than if you pull with a palm down position. So there's generally less ability to influence that from that other perspective. So what we're going to focus on today is looking at some ways that we can train both concentric movement for all of these four movements, as well as isometric movements resisting them. Does that make sense? Perfect. So what we'll do to start with is we'll look, and really for me that is sort of the framework of all of my grip stuff, is understanding. In the same way yesterday when I taught the jiu-jitsu stuff, we're looking at the position first And then once we understand the position, then it's very easy to see how we get there. Same with this. If you understand the movement or the position of the wrist, then you can find ways of training that as well. So for we'll start with wrist flexion. It's a very common one, and there's lots of ways that we can train this. I'll show you some exercises, and then we'll have a play around doing them. So one way that we can train wrist flexion here is by straddling over the top. You can have whatever way is comfortable. Resting the forearm, back of the forearm on the leg here, and training wrist flexion like this. So you'll see a lot of movements where I'm creating as much support as I can with on the forearm, on the rest of the arm, so I can really focus all of that energy just into the wrist. So you have this, you can load this up with weight, just bringing this onto the leg and doing this. If you want, you can play around with taking a wider position and training it on the two-handed side of the bar as well. I'll show you this just with no weight to begin with. This is a movement that I'm really liking. Yeah, let's chuck the toes on. Yeah, yep. You can train that here. When you're doing this, be careful about how you pick it up and put it down, mainly put it down. A lot of people talk about this in the judo video. Some people will do this, they'll go for, they'll really fatigue themselves and then they'll just drop it. If you're dropping it like that, a lot of weight going down there, then that can get dangerous. This is really nice. You can do the same thing. It's a little bit safer with a dumbbell. Traditionally, this is how most people would train up a very isolated wrist curl position. I actually don't like the dumbbell wrist curls. Some people really like this, but for me, when I wrist curl here, I find naturally it starts to turn and it goes slightly into a deviated position, and just like the movement feels not very nice. I really like having the stability of the barbell there in that scenario. Other flexion exercises. Landmine's nice. This is nice. So the idea is that if you know what position you're looking for, you can find ways of training that however you like and with whatever you have. Another way that you can train it is with a plate. Again, you can support on the legs or on a bench. You can combine it with a bit of a pinch movement, and this also starts to work the finger pressure a little bit more. So you can train wrist extension, wrist curls with a plate here, like this. You can do that there, and you can do that off of the bench. And that, you're working a lot of flexion stuff, you're also working finger pressure. Whether an exercise is quote unquote superior to another one is the interesting question. I don't think that there's necessarily a superior one blanket statement for everyone. I think it's going to be down to the individual. Most people, I personally prefer at the moment anyway, I really like the barbell with forearm supported curl, but have a play with it until you feel. That's what it's there for, right?
You got something.
I was wondering if they had basically the more.
There you go.
Just enough.
That's okay.
Where's that kettlebell?
What's that? Oh yeah, perfect.
Found one.
So if you guys want to look over here real quick, I'll show you. We can take this here, feed it through, keep the ends kind of flat and neat like this, and then you can roll this nice and tight, and then stand up and curl here like this, and this just feels really nice. And I can do this. Now this is really difficult because as you lift up more of the towels, it's getting thicker and thicker and thicker. So you're working that flexion, support, and then increase in size, more and more open. So that's a really nice exercise you can do. So that's 4 exercises to play with. Landmine wrist curl, towel standing wrist curl, forearm supported plate curl, wrist curl, forearm supported barbell wrist curl, and a mounted wrist roll. Cool? Let's give it a go. There's a nice wide platform here as well. I like that. That's what's that? That's the half man. Yeah, yeah. That's really heavy for that. Yeah. Not front. Yeah, no, I do this front. Guys, another way you can do just on this here, if you have a cable attachment handle, you have a cable machine, you know, something that you're going to have a anywhere within, you can get to here, you can support the arm flexion here. Yeah, beautiful. Yes.
This one feels nice. Yeah. Got that little weak one.
Then you can reverse that with your adjustment. I can handle the arms right before you
So, you reckon families is better than this too?
let's do some white roll. Yeah, some people want to go here, just a little bit, get like a handle size that feels good, and then just here. And then the other exercises with the roll. If you haven't trained it much before, then it will fatigue, and you know it'll be sore the next day. But yeah, if you're not used to it, yeah, you can get a pump. You can get a pump pretty easily. So this is just giving an example of how easy it is to find tools to train wrist flexion. What we're going to do now, I guess, when we start to look isometrically, especially for grappling, we can look at wrist flexion isometrics in two ways. One is being able to hold a flexed position, which can be very useful, especially if you're grappling. A lot of these positions here, you know, you're holding that flexed position. So you can do stuff like your wrist curls, where you're keeping the position here, or you're seated, and you're keeping, I guess this would be a little bent over, you want the gravity working in that flex position. It works very nice with the cable stuff, because cables are so good because you can get a consistent resistance at whatever angle, you can get into a flex position, and you can hold that flex position there. Stuff where we're doing the wrist supported, it is more about going from an extended position to just past flexed. So not ideal for holding that flex position. There's much more than that. I can change my grip. I can work different aspects of grip on one pull-up bar. If I want to develop my finger strength, I can do pull-ups from my fingertips, or even individual fingers, depending on how crazy you are. If you're a climber, that's easy work. You can. Most people, when they grab a ball, they grab it in a very inefficient position. So they'll grab with their wrist below the hand, something like this. Okay? You grab in this position here, you're not getting any engagement in the flexors from a position. You're only getting engagement in the flexors from the closing of the hand, which is one of the jobs of the flexor. The forearm flexor, there's lots of muscles in there. They close the hand and they bend the wrist. So if I grab like this, they're only working to close the hand, and they're not engaging a lot of the other parts of the forearm. So a lot of people will find when they do pull-ups, they'll struggle with the top position. They can get their chin over the bar, but they can't get their chest to the bar. Someone commented on the video I did with Juji actually, saying, you know, Juji can get chin over the bar, but I'm going sternum to the bar every time. How am I able to do that? Is it because I'm much stronger than him? Yeah. No. It's because I'm engaging in a bit, I mean, I'm a bit lighter than him, but I'm engaging differently. So when I'm looking to grab a ball, I'm coming round into a, not quite a full script, but a semi-full script position. And that now is engaging much more with the forearm. Look at the forearm engagement here. as I drop down, it completely changes. So taking that position, you can do that thumbless or you can do it with the thumb, but focusing on keeping some wrist flexion here allows you to really have that strength throughout the entire range of motion. My ceiling's not high enough, I can't do that at home. But it keeps, you're able to pull with that. And that works, that flex position isometrically. You can take it to the next stage and you can do what would be a no-handed pull-up. So you can close your hands here like this and you can just bring your wrist over the bar and you're just using the hook of the position here to either hold or to do pull-ups from. And of course that is going to be passively working that flex position a lot more. Like that. So with a thin grip position, I'm having to rely purely on my ability to maintain this flexion. Because it doesn't want it. It wants to drop down. When you get a thicker handle, it supports that position more. So I've had some really thick handles, but 5-inch diameter handles now, where you're unable to do anything other than do that flexed wrist position. Yes. Yep.
Any climb master, right? It's your thing.
No fingers, hooks, just hooks. I don't think I could do that.
Yeah. Can you feel the difference there?
Yeah.
So try it on the spin box, because again, it's another story. Here we go. Good. Yeah.
Doesn't want to stay overnight.
That's it. You gotta. But that's where you gotta build the strength. You can practice that. Yeah.
It's way harder at the top.
Yeah. So, you know, it's one of those things that the strongest position anatomically isn't necessarily the strongest position for you. Because if you have trained the weaker position more than the stronger position, it will be stronger. But if you put the same amount of training into both, the stronger position will be way better. So if you're used to doing your pull-ups here, and you feel okay with that, and then you switch to here, and you've never done that before, this will feel weaker for a bit, but you put a bit of practice into that, you'll blow past your previous. So this is, this is not anything new, nothing's new, but this is something that people train. I've taught a lot of this before, like I said, arm wrestlers, massive training, that flex position there. Now the stuff that I'm focusing more on recently is training the flexors, not holding a flex position to resist going into neutral, but holding a neutral position to resist going into extension. Okay? Because actually, as you've already seen, I mean, if you guys want to feel it, take your hand, bend your wrist, and try and grip your wrist here like this. You can feel you can't generate any force. So this is why grip is so nuanced. If I'm looking to connect myself to something, for me, grip is about connecting, using my lower arm to connect myself to something I want to connect to physically, right? So if I'm trying to grab something with the hand, I don't want to be in this position. That's going to be basically the weakest position possible. But if I'm not grabbing with the hand and I'm using the wrist as a hook, then I want to be strong in that position. So now what we're going to look at is keeping the wrist in a neutral position and resisting against extension. So again, we can use the same sort of tools we were using before. My favorite way of training this is with the barbell. In this scenario, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take my hands pretty close together. I'm going to deadlift up. I'm going to sit back. I'm going to keep my wrists in that neutral position, and I'm going to hold. Okay? Now, I like to go a little bit longer with the hold. Some people like isometrics of sort of 6 or 5 to 10 seconds. I like sort of 10, 15, maybe 20 seconds. What you'll feel, we can have a play around with this. We can go quite heavy here. What you'll feel if you hold this for long is that you'll feel the point on which your muscles start to fatigue and the connective tissue starts to be worked on. Okay? And that is it's an interesting feeling, but you go, okay, I'm building something deep inside of the, I'm building that connective tissue, and that the isometrics is a big part of it.
Holding there. Like this.
We can do it with your rolled towel. Here like this. So we're finding something that wants to take us into extension, and we're keeping it in that neutral position there. Playing around with the thick and thin handled variations, especially if you're a grappler. If you're doing gi, your thin handle stuff is going to be more relevant. If you're doing no gi, there's a use case for thick handle. But even if you're doing no gi, I would still train some thin handle because usually you can probably load it a little bit more. So yeah, you can play around with the thickness of the grips, yeah. Yeah, so when I grab with the barbell, I'm going to be in quite a deep position. When I grab with the plate, my hands are going to be open. So with the plate, you're going to be working finger pressure a little bit as well. Now, these are examples of working resistance against extension completely statically. I get to a position and it's just holding that and waiting, you know, I'm working that completely, nothing is moving. It looks like a picture. You can do the same thing with movement. So you can build it into a like secondary function, or you can add secondary functions behind that. I am resisting extension in the wrist. It's a pretty mechanically advantageous position because the weight is through the line of the hand. But, you know, especially for that moment here, when I'm at 90 degrees, I am resisting against extension. So this is not something that no one has ever trained before. Very few movements are. They're just not being trained with specific intention. So a good example of something that you can work with moving while still working this is plate curls, plate bicep curls. So we're working that sort of hold, but with the full movement here. Okay? Now, what's the advantage of this one? What's the difference? Why would I pick one over the other? Well, obviously with the curl, you're not working the wrist as much, but you're working the bicep more, you know? So it depends what you're looking to do. If you want an exercise that's going to hit both of those things, do I want to find a bicep curl variation that's going to hit my finger pressure and my resistance against extension? You can do wrist curl. You know? So I like finding ways of creating, you know, taking two concepts and mixing them together to find something that suits my goals a little bit more. Okay? So let's have a play with this static stuff. The main ones here, yeah, you can use the towels, a little difficult because it's quite low. But the plate hold, and then really this is the main one. This you can use a dumbbell for. It's actually a lot safer to use a dumbbell than a barbell here. They're pretty heavy. You can use a kettlebell as well. Show you the kettlebell. So why is it safer? I can use the second hand to get me into position. I can release for the hold. And then when I start to feel it fade, I can grab and I can lift it here. You can do the exact same thing with the kettlebell. I go here, I load into position, and I hold like this. And again, you know, hold this, and you can grab some heavier weights if you want and push yourself a little bit. After about 10-15 seconds, you should feel the tension change a little bit from muscle to connective tissue. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of, I've worked up to maybe 80 kilo now. I get the position and the length of it makes a difference because it's further away. So I would look to go from here. Now, what I tend to find is it's hard to go much past it. Yeah. You can't really go past this. So yeah, I'm really, it's, and the nice thing about isometrics is that the risk of injury is very low if you're smart with it. Okay, we'll roll on to some extension now. So extension obviously is the opposite of flexion here. It's extension at the wrist. Now I used to talk about extension from a purely remedial perspective. I used to say that extension, training your extensors and wrist extension is good for balancing out all of the flexion work we're doing when we're grabbing weights, when we're climbing, when we're grappling, all of these things, and you're building balances. That's why you can get tendonitis on the inside of the elbow. You work the extensors to help balance that out. Whilst that is true, more recently I've come to see value in extension work from a performance perspective. Especially, for example, resisting flexion is going to be about developing extensors. So just like we did before, we can train extension isometrically and concentrically, like this. And you can train wrist extension. Okay. Extension. The isometric work is simply this, and you're going to fill that into extensors pretty damn fast. This is a really nice exercise. I've described that to a lot of people. So a lot of exercises like the wrist curl or the hold, even though the primary working muscle is the extensors, you're still holding on to something. It's got a little bit of flexion work. So how can I train the extensors without any closing of the hand? And one way is to, in the same way that we were hooking here like this, I hook backwards. So I'll place the band around my knuckles, I anchor high, and I take my wrist into extension, take a few steps back, and now just to hold that position, those extensors are firing like a monkey. And again, I can just hold statically. You hold that for 5-10 seconds, a good tension, the extensors are lit up. Or I can do some rows, here like this. Before we would go into flexion, if we pull backwards, we work an extension. And when you do this, by the way, when you do your wrist rolling stuff, wrist rolling is going to work it, but also you can just work an extensors here, work an extensor. You know, that becomes much harder once you start to get that elastic resistance in there as well. So you can see there's so many different ways of training stuff. What other extensions are there? You are training quite heavily, training resistance against extension, resistance against flexion, and of course you're working some of the arm as well. Make sense? Let's have a play.
That sort of open wound road then, like a
Yeah.
over 15 years, and I can definitely see it.
I see what you mean about using a bar instead, because my wrist just wants to twist.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I don't believe that extension work anymore is purely remedial. When it's purely remedial, I'm like, oh, do 15 to 20 reps, just get a burn on to know that you're working it, you know, don't push it too hard. I think now I'm pushing it a little bit more, but I'm still treating it gently. And I put if you working extensors really, really hard, that's quite advanced stuff. So to begin with, lightweight, 5 kilos on this, 15, 20 reps, 10 to 20 reps. Once you feel the burn, you know that the muscle's working. Keep a couple of reps in reserve. Don't go too crazy on it. Exactly. Anything. Yeah, anything. Yeah. I mean, that's it. Like, it's a type of muscle that people don't really work. So if you're doing them a lot, they're going to get more developed. Yeah, you do that. Wrist roll is really good. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just like do the work, take time, be patient, be good. They'll be popping in no time. Okay, so what we're going to look at next is we have flexion, we have extension. Now we're going to look at deviation. So deviation is the movement, sort of, I guess you would say, side to side of the wrist. If you want the technical terms of ulnar and radial deviation, good way to remember it. The ulnar is under you for ulnar. It's the bone that runs along under. This is ulnar deviation, under you, and then this is the other one. There's no one in there. Radial deviation. So again, for jiu-jitsu and for indeed anything, even climbing, where you're having to be strong in these positions. When you go to you can just sit on the floor in front of me. When you go sink a choke on someone here, or for example, like if I'm going to do a one-handed rear naked choke, and I'm in this position here, I want to be strong where I want to be strong, and I want to be able to move when I want to be able to move. Look, look, I can get that here, or when I'm here, I want to be, or if you're in the gi, you know, you want to be strong in this position. So being able to move when you want to move, hold when you want to hold, stop someone from taking your wrist out of position, you know? Grab something like this, bring your wrist like that, it's going to be harder to hold. If I can stop myself from bringing my wrist in the vertical when I don't want it to, I'm going to have a stronger grip. So, exercises we can do we'll do it together, ulnar and radial deviation. Hammers are always excellent. This hammer is a little bit heavy, but that's okay because one hammer is going to give you a huge number of different levels of resistance. The head, the lighter it's going to be, and the further you grab from the hammer head, it's going to break. The heavier it's going to be. So for radial deviation stuff, we're going to do radial first. You're going to keep arm by the side and bring in the hammer head up like this. Okay? And of course, to make it harder, you're just going to drop down a little bit more. Now, a lot of people, when they do this, they'll use their arm, they'll be bent in here. Again, focus on keeping it as straight as you can and trying to isolate on that. For ulnar deviation, we just grab the other way around and you hold it like this. 2 clips and away, and you have a leverage bar for doing these exercises. This is kind of funky because it's a bit thicker as well. I'm going to be doing it more. I want to get my inch stuff, and I think developing the strength in that open hand probably has some real value. So, as of about 5 days ago, yes, worth it.
Look at those back grip gloves.
Yeah, exactly, with the flat grip gloves. Again, it's going to be, you're going to be able to lift less weight with the thicker ones. So using them for different purposes. You can do these same movements. I have some seated variations as well. I've got very lazy in my old age. I like to do lots of seated stuff at the moment. But you can go here. It's quite light. But this way for ulnar deviation, and this way for radial deviation. If you're lazy, or if you're like me, and you like to do it with a little hammer whilst you're driving. Do my exercises here.
It's like Stallone.
Yeah, I tell you what, it's yeah, exactly. I tell you what, when I do it, people just pull out of my way. It's fucking amazing. It's in the movement. You can use a kettlebell. You can grab the sides of the kettlebell here, and there's 2 ways to do this. I used to do it this way when I would radial deviate to lift. You can do this. You can also do it on the floor. But this is a lot easier because you have that fulcrum, you have that leverage point at the bottom of the kettlebell. So to make it harder, you can again bring your wrist off and then train here. This is much harder. Really, really nice to train that. Kettlebells, it's the complete opposite side. So, you know, you can't do this. It doesn't work. So for this, this works here. We can also train both of those movements isometric? Yeah, so isometrically, holding here. Really, really good exercises. Holding here. Holding here. Holding there. High anchor point is going to be your ulnar stuff. Yeah, and then a low anchor point. It's going to be your radial stuff. Okay, this doesn't really. I mean, you can do it from low, but it's way better from high. I'll show you a really nice way that I like to use these the bands for this stuff. If you've got a ring, is it attached to something? And the rings are here. And I really like two-handed stuff. So hold in here. I can slide on the legs, move like this. I can do isometric stuff like this. I can do the dynamic isometric stuff like this. Again, hold is a little bit harder to do. Standing, I can crane here, and I can hold there. Okay? Like I say, you can do this with, look, you can do it with anything. You get your belt, it's why, you know, I wear this just in case I need to train my wrist somewhere. And I don't have any equipment. All right? I mean, look, one of the things that I was working on last year, and I will complete this at some point because it's just a bit of a fascinating project to me, but I'm trying to come up with a full grip training system to work every type of grip, hand and wrist, with zero equipment. And I mean, no floor, no wall, nothing. Just with my other hand, basically. So you're working isometric, you're working concentric, you're working here. And I came up with like all of these, I've got it on a little whiteboard on Canva, all of these images, and I look like I'm doing some sort of crazy Carter thing. But you know, working the fingers, working, you know, a lot of it is jiu-jitsu stuff. You know, working here, working there, working finger extension, working wrist extension. You don't need anything, you know? And isometrics are famously have been used in times where you didn't have any equipment. Who was it? Who's the strong man who would train isometrically with the bars in prison during World War II? Like break out, beat up a Nazi, get thrown back in jail, break out again, go beat up another Nazi. I can't remember his name, but you get the idea. You know, you can build a lot of strength just with tension there. It's just a little bit hard, you've got to know what you're doing because it's time and perceived rate of exertion. You don't have any external feedback, it's all internal. But you can find a way. So you guys want to play with this? So it's basically you have the three main ways. You have the leverage bars or sledgehammers, the belts, and the bands. And the sort of belts and bands together, and the kettlebells. Let's give it a go. There's like a fun game you can do with that, is if you have a coin or something. Pretty big coin this, but you put it down. You can put that there. You can pick it up and carry, walk, or whatever you want to do. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This is leverage wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, it does work. The four primary movements of the wrist, as they pertain to keeping strength transferring through the hand. The analogy that I really like, I came up with last week, is the wrist is the bridge between the body and the hand. And if you imagine, like, you rock up, the army rocks up with a tank, and there's a rickety wooden rope bridge. They've got to get out, and they've got to cross one by one. It's not going to be very useful when they get to the outside. But if they rock up, and you've got a solid steel, reinforced, the tank rolls straight over, you're going to be able to transfer that strength into the hand. And that's what you're going to feel when someone really grabs you, you know, is really strong. It's not a strong hand that you're going to feel. I've rolled with people who have strong hand, like can double overhand on a regular bar deadlift, you know, 250, 300 kilos, but they grab you and then you move a bit. Okay. Or they grab onto you here and you manipulate it a little bit and it's nothing. The people who grab on, it's like your scaffolders, your laborers, the guys who have been working in awkward positions, getting strong there, and they grab onto your wrist, and when you move, it just doesn't occur. That's what you're looking to create with this. And yeah, look, there's probably nothing where that's more relevant than grappling, because you're trying to hold on to there's no, like, what else apart from combat sports is your sport grabbing and holding on to a human being? I mean, police officers, prison guards, things that you need to grapple with a human. That's going to be the hardest because it's something that is consciously and potentially intelligently trying to remove the grip. If they don't know the technical ways to do it, you grab on stuff. You grab a civilian. If you're a grappler, you grab a civilian, and they try and strip the grips or try and get away, and you're just like, okay, you done yet? It's great. But this is, for me, at the moment, that's the main focus of a lot of my training. Strength is never a weakness, and for me, the greatest needle mover, I believe that the greatest difference you can create in your full body strength with the smallest amount of effort in the shortest amount of time is developing your grip strength. I believe that you're saying that in a week of training your grip goes up by 10 kilos on a dynamometer. In a week of doing squats will make no difference to your life at all. Even a couple of months. But a couple of, 2 months of training your grip intelligently 3 times a week, what's going on here? It makes a really, really big difference. And you'll feel it in life. It'll make a difference. I would probably avoid training the 2 different types, the concentric and isometric, of the same movement in the same session. Because I'm going to program it. So when I do my programming for my own stuff and when I'm writing programs, I'm looking to go, I'm trying to hit these movements per week, and I'm putting 1 exercise per movement per session. So if I'm training flexion, let's say I'm doing flexion 3 times a week, and I'm going to do isometric twice, or isometric once and concentric twice, I'm going to split that up on different days, just so you don't really have to worry about it. If you were insistent on doing it on the same day, I would probably train isometric last. Because you're looking, with the isometric stuff, you're looking to emphasize more of the connective tissue training, and if you pre-fatigue the muscles, that would help. But if you pre-fatigue the tendons and ligaments, probably not so much. Yeah. But I'd split it personally. Yeah. Riser stuff is a movement in arm wrestling, which it's just lifting with resisting deviation. So it will be stuff like this they'll do. Arm wrestlers also, so you asked me about supination and pronation. So I would train usually, if we had a bit more time, we could talk about supination, pronation, very simply. Supination is turning your palm face up. Pronation is turning your palm face down. Your little thing to remember what it is soup in the hand, and the other one's the other one. So your pronation, and remember when you're starting with the supinated position and you're moving, you're pronating. So you can use a leverage bar. This is your, from here to here is pronation. Then we're supinating, and we're pronating. So this is a way of doing it. You can do supination and pronation with a kettlebell like this. Much harder to do. Same sort of thing as with the band. From low, it's easy to pronate. From high is where you want to supinate here. This feels nicer. Again, I love two-handed stuff at the moment. One of my favorite, I'm doing lots of pronation stuff with the kettlebell, and I'll just do this to get the position. And look over here, and it just feels really good. You can supinate like this. Just doesn't feel quite as good, but it does work. Came up with those a little while ago, and I think they're way better than anything else I do. So arm wrestlers will also, they'll train that combination of pronation. When I've locked up with arm wrestlers, because no one really needs to be super strong at pronating unless you're arm wrestling. When you're arm wrestling, you're trying to turn there, open up. You're going into what do they call that? Hook in and top roll. This position here. So you want to have really strong pronators, so they put so much work into pronation. So I lock up with an arm wrestler. I've trained with some good arm wrestlers, and my wrist flexion here, they're like, damn, I can't do anything with it. But if they fight me pronator versus pronator, they'll just kill me. They're lifting like this. This is a resistance against supination, so you're training pronation isometrically, as well as, because it's towards the end of lever here, you're having to resist a little bit of ulnar deviation as well. So again, same sort of thing. Keeping your wrist in strong position so your opponent can't take you into weak positions. For us, in jiu-jitsu, it's a lot more broad. With arm wrestling, there's a few things that they're going to look to do, so they focus on working those positions isometrically. But you'll see some of these guys, they also tend to wrap the stuff around a lot, or they'll put their hand through and they'll do this, and they'll get to these crazy positions and then they'll lift fucking 100 kilos like that. It's crazy. But yeah, bridge here. The supination and pronation, it will have a small effect, but it will mainly be like a full arm effect. Because when you pronate, the biceps disengaged, and when you supinate, the bicep engages more. So generally, depends on what you're grabbing, but people are going to have much less ability. It's much harder to force someone in and out of pronation from a broader perspective than it is in, say, arm wrestling, when you're really trying to work that stuff. But you still want to be strong then. And again, I'll train supination and pronation as more remedial exercises for if you want to get them popping, or indeed if you want to do arm wrestling. But the wrist, if you actually look at the wrist through these movements, the joint doesn't move, right? So it's all isometric with the wrist for supination and pronation. The wrist doesn't move, and actually it's the elbow is generating the strength. When I'm here and I'm working in these positions, I will look to force my opponent's hands into supinated positions. I'll strip like this, I'll control here, and I'll force the hands into weak positions.
Okay.
So it's so context specific, but believe me, I don't want, if someone's grabbing me here like this and they're grabbing with a straight wrist, and I can force that wrist into this position here, or if I can force the wrist into that position there, it will get weaker. So you don't want, if you are super strong at resistant flexion and extension and kind of weak at resistant deviation, you'll find it in jiu-jitsu. Okay. You'll find that weakness and it will be exploited. We'll get a line of people going. Just don't let it fall off the end there. We'll get a line of people going, and once everyone's done it, we'll go up and wait until see who's standing. Who wants to go next? All there? Yep. All right. I put chalk on to do bodyweight squats, so I'm a big chalk proponent. Nice, good. Yeah, just scoot it forward a little bit more. Oh, you've got longer. Yeah, you've got longer arms. Nice strong box. Nice. Yep. Yes. No? Okay, a little rest, I reckon. You lift this, it will make it harder. You want to push in with the bottom of your hand and pull up with the forefinger. Yeah. So this, it's why it's so much easier than doing it there, where you haven't control the entire thing. It's an anchored limb from jiu-jitsu, from the Seminoles. It'll probably be easier thumb, because you can do it. Go on. Keep it pinned. Yeah, there you go.
Hummus is definitely easier.
Hummus is easier?
Easier.
Yeah. Nice. Good. Go on. So with grip stuff, how it basically goes is easy, glue to the ground.
Yeah, it feels like it's fluid.
Right, that's grip, yeah. 3 photons. Come on, lift it. Go on. Go on. Nice, go down. There you go. The easier way to do it is to lock in here and then pull back together. So you want to be here and then lift. There? And then go. Go.
Oh, close.
So it's a cheat
Nope.
to get cheat to put.
There'll be a little bit. Once you've got it, it's easy.
It's like people tell me you've got to agree. People on
We can't really actually, we don't have any magnets on
and
it.
it's hungry, and it's also like moving with people. And when they try it, you know, I really think I'm not scared. Let me get one else.
I think it was just a little edged in there.
Yeah. Like using the knots. So that's a knot. So there's hardly any strength compared to being able to do that when you slip. So that's a knot.
Something's working, man.
Yeah, I see. It's all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll do 10. Look at that. Oh, it's burning.
Thing is, once you've got it going once, it's like a muscle up. The first one's the hardest. Because then you've got the groove there.
Yeah.
Now you can quantify, this is a 1, this is a 5, today I'm doing this, tomorrow I'm going to do that. Another like nice little exercise I do is for a test with the blacksmith, same idea, you're just taking the hammer from a horizontal position into a vertical position here. Again, like you see some people, they'll do this. You can do that, but the goal is to keep this angle as small as possible as you lift. We can have a little bit of a play with that if you guys want. Yeah? Here you go.
That's your pull.
Yeah. So see that?
Yeah.
So like, when I do this,
Yeah.
a block of chalk here. Don't smudge the chalk. That's the game here, okay? So we want to do not touch the chalk. He's really scared of the lava though. Yeah. But when you again, this is a very similar lift to the kettlebell movement, but it's more isometric. You're not doing, it's an isometric version basically. So in the same way, don't look at the hand as a single point of contact when you lift. It's a lever, right? So when you grab here, if I just lift from there, it's just going to do that. You need to push down. So your index finger and thumb become the fulcrum. Okay, so they're going to go up, and the back of your hand becomes the load on the other side. You need basic, yeah, exactly. You need resistance in opposing directions to get rotation. Otherwise, you'll just lift and it won't move, right? So when you see people doing this and it's going like that, that's because there's no drive in the bottom and lift from the front. Who's next? That's good. Yep.
Satisfactory referee?
Yes.
Good. That's a good second. Yeah.
I feel like you took the long there.
Amazing what an inch difference in each makes.
Yeah, that's what I keep telling them. So you're so vocal. The thing is, I feel like you're going to be able to lift up 1,000 kilos in that position. Josh pushing it to the absolute limits there.
Yeah, I would too.
That's not line.
Rules are rules.
Rules are rules. Rules are rules. Nice. Yeah. Is everyone gone? Forward for about 3 months. It's about half of what he is. I won't tell him, don't worry. His insistence to stay in.
And as I said, Dan has to do 10. That's crazy.
That's a bit rough. So, okay. What I probably maybe should have done before. All the way to vertical if we can. Good. Very strong.
So we need a foul guy.
What's that?
My golden hand.
One more hit.
Yeah, I want to practice.
Depends what you mean by that. Nope.
So there, one more.
Yeah. Have as many tries as you want. Good job, good job. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Stronger left or right? What's your name, buddy? Brian. Good Brian.
How heavy is this? This sledgehammer?
Heavy, I think it's 10 pounds. The heavy is a very relative term with this exercise. It's a leverage exercise.
Oh, man.
Robin, you asked my name too.
Yeah. Took him out of the zone.
Play my game for you.
I've got this on.
Oh, come on.
Bend your elbow.
Yes.
Oh, there we go. Good job, man. Very well. Come on, guys. Not just me. Oh, cool.
Hold my It's like, oh, everything else is going on.
Cool. Okay. Unliftable dumbbell. The difficulty with it is not the weight, it's the thickness of the handle. It's 2.26 inches, and that creates a lot of rotation from the fact that these are solid globes on the end. The 4 inch is 78 kilos. This is a smaller version of 64 kilos. Talk up your hands and have a crack.
Yeah, so much girth.
Yeah, but what about the belt?
Well,
So that is the mistake that Joe was telling me about. If you start in a flex position, well, as you lift it, it will start to turn. And the more it starts to turn, the faster it will turn afterwards. So you want to try and lift it without any rotation at all.
you already had practice.
I haven't practiced.
Really good. Oh! Oh, yeah.
I think it's gonna happen.
Go again. You're going to be strong to yeah. So there's two ways you can lift it. You can lift it straight and you can lift it tilted. Don't use hand to get it. You see how they go in your head.
Yeah.
Great.
Why can't I? Didn't work the first.
See how like reach better.
It's just one day. My left and right.
It's about the same as yesterday.
63.7. 56.4. Current leader 63.7.
Got
54.3.
Yeah, what?
70.8.
Jeez. Okay.
Oh, that. It's a repeat myself.
62.3.
Oh, it's not enough. Yep. 42.5.
There we go. Excellent. You want to look at it? Did you not look at it?
No, I didn't look at that.
Look at it.